Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Thank you for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja based event and wedding photographer, Tavishima Ayede. Today, I'd like to take you guys on a little bit of a history lesson, should I say. I'd like to take you guys down memory lane. For those of you who've been listening from day one, you will remember that this podcast came about because of interactions with a good friend of mine, Laura Michael Phillips, of Posh and Pristine Wedding Planning. Sorry, Posh and Pristine Events. Yes, an event planning company. Not They don't just do weddings, but they also do small parties, corporate events, and loads of other stuff. So that's how this podcast started, basically. Because she also has another business, and that's the Wedding Planning Academy. You can Google them or check them up on Instagram. That's for those of you who are listening to the podcast who are intending wedding planners, and you feel like you need a few sessions with industry professionals to get up to speed, learn about the business before you put your toe in the water. And so for her training sessions, for the wedding planning school, we had a number of her training sessions. I think we did two in-person sessions, and then for one set we did online because that's built into the early into the coronavirus thing last year. So anyway, while we started off the first sessions with her and her students, she figured that this is something that I'm good at, and I should pay more attention to promote, give it some much more serious thought. And then one of the ideas that was tossed around casually was the idea of a podcast. She actually was supposed to have started a podcast as well, but lo and behold, it's been over a year, and I'm getting close to 150 episodes so far. And unfortunately, Laura hasn't started her own podcast yet. So, as a cautionary tale to those of you who are all considering some things but haven't just quite pulled the trigger, just bear in mind that it's not. If you keep talking about stuff all the time but you don't pull the trigger, you're not going to be able to reap the rewards. Not that I have any rewards at the moment to speak of, because I haven't sold the podcast. There's no sponsorship. I don't make any money or accept any advertising. But I'm just saying that bottom line, there was this casual conversation. I started on the journey. Unfortunately, my friend hasn't. And I'm sure that when she does, she's going to have a beautiful podcast, because even though Laura is a wedding planner, her previous professional background was in TV production. So unlike me, I'm just content to record anywhere. So if I'm in the kids' room, I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the car, I'm at the mechanic. I'm sure you guys have, remember some of those episodes that I just whip out the phone and record while I'm waiting for the car to be serviced and worked on. So for me, I'll record anywhere. But since she has a professional TV background, she's going to make sure that it's top-notch, high production value, and all of that. Well, apart from business value, or if it happens to be a personal podcast, whatever it is, she'll be top-notch. So, yeah. So, Laura, if you're listening, don't forget that podcast conversation, and please do join the club. And when she does, I'll let you guys know, so you guys can go on. I'm sure there will be a couple of things that you could learn as well. And then plus, you get to meet the rest of the family. Those are people who are my professional family here in Abuja. Folks who I run in the same circles with. Anyway, so our first session, she figured, should be on professionalism, business communications, and networking. So the first ever set of in-person trainings that I did in Abuja were precisely around those topics. Professionalism, business communications, and networking. And that's because at the time, we're trying to put our finger on certain X factor, but we couldn't quite narrow it down to one thing. And so that was the compromise, the three. And that pretty much launched what Laura and I started doing together, with their own training sessions. So so that's just a side note. That's part of the origins of the podcast. Anyway, so while we had that session, the professionalism, business communications, and networking session, one of the questions that I asked the people who showed up was, who are you? And the second question was, why are you here? There's several other questions, but those are the first two questions that I figured were the most important. Well, who are you? Because whenever I'm having training sessions, because I've also had training sessions on other things, photography training, for instance, one that I did with the British High Commission. They wanted me to bring their folks up to speed about framing, composition, and mobile phone photography, shooting with DSLRs and things like that. So at whatever trainings that I run, whether they're sales related or photography related, I'd like to have us go around and make the introductions. But apart from that, there was one thing particularly that I was hoping to tease out from there. In the who are you question, what you do, what are you up to, previous academic background, previous professional background, people don't often pay attention to the fact that there's stuff that you have done in your past that has immense social capital and learning capital that you can apply to what you want to do today. So for those people who are in Laura's class who wanted to be wedding planners, there was somebody who worked in the IT space. She was with an app tech franchise. There was another person who was worked with an a staffing company, a human resources and staffing company, and someone else who did stuff in the alternative beauty industry. All these people who are coming up with healthy, environmental, all this earthy stuff about makeup that is good for your skin and good for your environment and things of that nature, and promoting ideas of beauty that are not destructive to the feminine psyche. So we had people from all these sorts of backgrounds, or someone who was involved in selling agricultural produce, and somehow you just assume that, okay, because I sold chicken eggs in the past, there's nothing that relates to what I'm going to do now, which is I'm going to be an event planner. So the same goes for those of you who are into photography or makeup or whatever. There's a relationship and there is a carryover effect, especially if we're going to look at professionalism, business communications, and networking. Because even if you're selling chicken eggs, you're supposed to appear professional. You should be good at business communications, because it's not only malams that you're going to sell your eggs to. Sometimes you sell to establishments, households. So you have to be effective at a certain level of communications. Doesn't necessarily have to be business to business communications, but you need to be comfortable in that sphere. And you have to do quite a bit of networking when you sell chicken eggs, especially when you sell chicken eggs, because there are lots of what are they called? I can't remember the term. Like when you have something, but in the process of getting that thing, okay, I'm not describing it well. But the bottom line is, people who sell chicken eggs also have to look out for other related industries where they can sell cracked eggs to, like people who make chicken feed, or maybe sell fertilizer and they need to grind up eggs for calcium and things like that. I'm just saying that when you sell eggs, networking is important, because it's not just the malam or the household or the hotel, but you also need contacts with the fertilizer company, with the animal feed company, and what have you. So, basically, the bottom line, what I'm trying to drive out here is, in answering the question, who are you and where have you been, there are some carryover, there's some transferable knowledge that comes with your previous industry that can be applied to your wedding photography business, or your wedding planning business, or whatever business you want to be involved in the event or wedding space. So yes, you studied law, and you worked in a law firm for a couple of years. There's a carry-on effect, at least as it relates to professionalism, business communications, and networking. There are things that you've learned there that are going to apply here. So, who are you? Important question to answer, because in that journey, you've picked up a lot of stuff that are integral to you now, that are going to be important in how you go about building this wedding and event business. And then the next question, why are you here? Why are you here? That's important because you need to be clear about why you're listening to this podcast or why you would happen to be sitting in on a session that's organized by someone like my friend Laura Michael Phillips. Why are you here? If you don't have a clear idea of what you hope to gain from this, then you'll just be wasting your time. So, if you are listening to this podcast just because, there's nothing else better to listen to on Nigerian podcasts, on the Nigerian podcast airspace, if you can call it that, because I've noticed that the more popular podcasts in Nigeria seem to be gist-based. We don't have much business podcasting or documentary podcasting, news-based podcasting. What else? Sports. I don't know if there are any sports podcasts. That would be an interesting one. Anyway, if you guys know any other kinds of podcasts like that, hit me up, because I'm always interested in doing some research to see what's out there on the space. So if you're here because there's nothing better to listen to, then still, please hang around, because hopefully you'll be able to pick up some good stuff by osmosis that should apply to your wedding planning, your wedding and event business, if you happen to be one of us. But if you're involved in doing other stuff, like if you sell chicken eggs, there's stuff here that you're going to learn that is going to come in handy as well. But bottom line is, to get the best out of these sessions, you need to know why you're here. And luckily for me, a lot of people who came to Laura's training sessions, the first two sets, they were quite clear. They were here because they were looking for diversified sources of income. Let's see, what else? I think I narrowed down the reasons why they were there to 3 buckets, but for now, I don't know why it's only the money bucket I remember. Anyway, maybe it's because all the things that I was talking about tied directly to money. That's professionalism, business communications, and networking. The whole point of it anyway is because we want to make more money, and loads of it. Well, I definitely do. I don't know about you. So you need to decide, why are you here? So why are you listening to this podcast? If you're going to take lessons with anyone, you need to ask yourself, why are you there? Really 2 important questions. And then other questions for the day were, how are these things related? Because some people say professionalism, business communications, and networking, there's no relation. Some other people say, oh yes, there's a relationship, but they don't have a very strong idea about what it is. And then there's some people who say, well, at most it's a tenuous relationship. It's not that strong. Anyway, so so how are these things related? Why are they important? And how do we foster them? So those were the questions for the day. I'm not going to look into these other questions and then how they tie into sales, but bottom line, the summary, I guess, what I'm just trying to say is that regardless of where you are coming from or your journey so far in the wedding and the event space, let's remember that our previous experiences, work experience, academic background, our previous business ventures, whatever it is, all these things that help make us uniquely who and what we are today, there are tremendous transferable knowledge and lots of capital that we can pull from that base and transfer to our wedding and event business. And we need to be clear about why we're here. After all, if we have a fuzzy goal, we'll just be trudging along in a very fuzzy zombie-like state. But then once we have clear reasons for what we're aiming for and why we're here, we can be laser focused and start making progress. And of course, by that note, if we're not making progress, then we can recalibrate and start moving to where we would like to be. So as we go forward in our journey, always remember those 2 questions. Who are you? And why are you here? I'm not going to propose that you read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, because really I haven't read the book and I'm not sure if I should, because to be honest, since I got on this sales train, I've been finding it really difficult to read some business books that are not sales related per se, or don't quite have a clear-cut business focus. Well, you know what? Okay, I make the promise here to you guys on the group. I'll look for a copy of the book, I'll buy it, and I'll read it. And we'll make that part of the book review that I have lined up for the future. There are a couple of books that I would like us to discuss here on the podcast. So that's all I wanted to achieve today. A little bit of a history lesson. And in the next couple of days, we're going to key up the topics of professionalism, business communications, and networking, why they are important for those of us in the wedding and the event space, and how those things tie in directly with our sales goals and our sales practices. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer, Tavishima Ayede. I will catch you guys on the next recording. One more thing. I did a listener, forgive me. I did a listener shout out on the other podcast. That's the So You're Getting Married podcast. This is a shout out to Dawudu. He's a photographer. Been chatting on Instagram. He says that this podcast is dope. And I like that a couple of you are reaching out, following up, reaching out, and we're having good conversations, because the act of recording the podcast is a one-way street, obviously. So the only way that I get to find out who you guys are and what you guys think about the podcast, or possible directions we should go, or topics that we should talk about, is when you guys reach out and you hit me up. So so that's it. Big up to my man Dawudu, and wishing you the best for your business this year, your photography business this year, as we're all pulling out of COVID. Well, not like we're pulling out of it per se, but those of us in the business community are definitely streamlining our processes for how we are going to go about growing our businesses and keeping safe as well. So, for Daudu and others who have been in touch in the past, thank you very much for reaching out. So, that's it. So I will catch you guys on the next episode.